You ever love someone so deeply, so completely, that you'd sacrifice everything just to see them shine? That was me, until the woman I built my life around left me for a so-called alpha male. Now she's back, crying on the phone, asking for a second chance. But here's the real question. What do you do when the past comes knocking? I met Natalie at a music festival just outside of Austin. It was one of those warm spring nights where everything felt electric. Music in the air, laughter in the background, and something about her smile made the whole crowd disappear. From the first conversation, we clicked like we'd known each other forever. Fast forward 2 years, we were married. 2 more years, and we were holding our newborn son, Jamie, in our arms. We were just a couple of kids in love, trying to make a life. I was working in the kitchen of a local bistro, nothing fancy, but it felt like home. I loved cooking, loved the chaos, the rhythm, the pride that came with every plate that left that kitchen window. When the pandemic hit, everything changed. Restaurants were shutting down, money was tight, and Natalie made the decision to quit her job to stay home with Jamie. I took on extra work delivering food through Uber Eats just to keep the lights on. We made it work, or at least I thought we did. When things began settling down, Natalie sat me down one night after Jamie had gone to sleep and told me she wanted to finish law school. Said she didn't want to be one of those women who lost their ambition just because they had a family. I admired that, really I did. I told her I'd support her any way I could. And I did. I picked up extra shifts, stayed up late making bottles, learned how to braid tiny curls, and took care of everything so she could focus. When she passed the bar, I was proud. Proud of her, proud of us. She landed a job at a firm downtown, thanks to her best friend Courtney, who never really liked me much. And that's when things slowly began to shift. At first it was small. She started dressing differently, working longer hours, going to more networking events on weekends. She asked me to quit my job and stay home with Jamie full-time. I didn't want to. I had worked hard to get promoted to head chef. But she was overwhelmed, and I wanted to be there for my son, so I let it go. I stepped away from the kitchen and stepped into full-time dad life, but I could feel the gap growing between us. Natalie changed. Her words got sharper, her presence colder. I'd wait up for her and she'd come home late, eyes tired, but never meeting mine. She spent more time texting than talking. I'd ask how her day was, and she'd just shrug. How do you hold on to someone who's already halfway out the door? When did my home stop feeling like mine? Intimacy became rare. Conversations became robotic. I chalked it up to stress. I kept pushing through, thinking maybe this was just a phase. But every day I felt more like the babysitter and less like a husband. What hurt the most wasn't just the distance, it was feeling invisible in the life I built. I cooked her breakfast every morning, made her coffee just the way she liked it, packed her lunch, took care of Jamie like he was my whole world. And in return, I got silence. Still, I kept hoping. Because when you love someone, they really value them, you don't walk away at the first crack in the foundation. You try to patch it up, you pray it holds. But the cracks were spreading faster than I could fill them. And deep down, I think I already knew we weren't going to make it. Then one evening, just after I put Jamie to bed and started folding the laundry, Natalie came home and didn't even say hello. She just stood in the hallway, staring at me like she didn't recognize who I was. I asked if everything was okay. She didn't answer right away, just took a deep breath, walked into the kitchen, and poured herself a glass of wine. I followed her in and leaned against the counter. Nat? I asked, trying to read her face. That's when she dropped it. No hesitation, no buildup. I want a divorce. It didn't hit me like a punch. It was more like standing on a frozen lake and suddenly hearing the crack beneath your feet. I had seen it coming, but that didn't make it any easier. I asked her if she was sure, if this was really what she wanted. I even suggested counseling or a trial separation, anything that might help us find our way back. But she shook her head. I've met someone else, she said. Just like that, her words knocked the air out of me. When things began settling down, Natalie sat me down one night after Jamie had gone to sleep and told me she wanted to finish law school. Said she didn't want to be one of those women who lost their ambition just because they had a family. I admired that, really I did. I told her I'd support her any way I could. And I did. I picked up extra shifts, stayed up late making bottles, learned how to braid tiny curls, and took care of everything so she could focus. I stood there, holding a tiny sock in my hand, wondering how the hell we got here. He says I should be living a life of luxury, she said, sipping her wine, not stuck in the suburbs with someone who delivers takeout and folds onesies. That broke something in me. Why does success always have to come at someone else's expense? When did sacrifice become weakness in her eyes? She mocked the very life she asked me to build with her, called me feminine for staying home with Jamie, said a real man wouldn't have let his wife carry the family financially. I reminded her that it was her idea for me to be a stay-at-home dad in the first place, that I gave up my dream for her. She just rolled her eyes. Then came the moment I'll never forget. I asked what would happen with Jamie. She shrugged, and said, "You can keep him. He likes you better anyway." I don't know what hurt more, being replaced or watching her toss our son aside like an old purse she no longer had time for. I felt something inside me shift. This woman standing in front of me wasn't Natalie, not the Natalie I married, not the woman who once cried happy tears in the delivery room, whispering that we'd be a family forever. She left that night. For 2 weeks, I couldn't breathe without hurting. I stayed up late just sitting in the living room, staring at the shadows on the wall, praying I'd wake up and find her curled next to me in bed. But every morning, the silence hit harder. I didn't eat. I didn't sleep. But I kept moving for Jamie, because in that wreckage, he was still smiling, still needing bedtime stories and peanut butter sandwiches and Lego towers, and I wasn't about to let him watch his dad fall apart. I begged for my job back at the restaurant. They gave me a few weeknights, nothing glamorous, but enough to start rebuilding. Every shift helped me breathe a little deeper, and slowly, painfully, I started figuring out how to live in the ashes she left behind. I won't sugarcoat it. Those first few months were brutal. Waking up to an empty bed, making breakfast for just me and Jamie, pretending like everything was okay when inside, I felt hollow. But routine became my survival. The morning cartoons, packing his little backpack for preschool, the smell of onions and garlic on my hands after a night in the kitchen. It all grounded me, kept me from drifting too far into the pain. Meanwhile, the world outside had its own story. On social media, Natalie was being celebrated like some heroine. Her friends posted selfies with her, hashtags like #BossBabe and #breaking chains in the captions. They saw a woman who had broken free from her deadbeat husband. Me. Not one person asked how I was doing. Not one friend or family member called to check on Jamie or see how we were adjusting. Why is it that when a woman leaves a man, she's strong, but when a man stays and holds everything together, he's weak? When did being steady become something to be ashamed of? I didn't respond publicly. I didn't post sad quotes or take jabs. I just kept moving. Got Jamie into a preschool down the street, learned how to braid his hair for picture day, built him a Lego city that covered half the living room. The days were long, but his laughter was a soundtrack I didn't know I needed until it filled our home again. Eventually, I started therapy. At first, I just wanted someone to listen, someone who didn't already have a side, someone who wouldn't look at me like I was the problem for being left behind. But over time, therapy became more than a sounding board. It became the place I unpacked years of neglect, of silence, of pretending everything was fine when it wasn't. And then, this past week, out of nowhere, I got a call. Unknown number. I answered, thinking it might be Jamie's school, but it wasn't. It was Natalie. Her voice cracked the moment I said hello. She was sobbing, like full-body, breathless sobbing. She said Mitchell, the alpha male, had left her, that he found someone else, someone younger, someone more his speed. She was too afraid to confront him about it because he was a partner at her firm, and she didn't want to make a scene. I said nothing for a while. I just let the silence sit there. She finally started talking, told me everything, how she felt unattractive after having Jamie, how the pandemic made her feel useless, how she couldn't bear to look in the mirror some days. She said when she got the job and started feeling seen again, it was like waking up after years of sleep. But instead of turning toward me, she turned toward Courtney, her friend who had just gotten divorced and was busy preaching about how men were anchors holding women back. According to Natalie, Courtney filled her head with poison, told her I was a beta, a burden, a man with no ambition, that Natalie was too beautiful and too smart to waste her life on a washed-up cook with daddy duties. And the worst part? Natalie listened. She cried about all the little things I used to do. How I packed her lunch with Post-it notes that made her smile. How I always reminded her to take her vitamins. How I'd warm up her slippers before she got home in the winter. She said she missed me, said she missed us, said she wanted to come home. And just like that, the woman who shattered my world was asking me to help her pick up the pieces. I sat there gripping my phone, listening to Natalie cry. And for a split second, just a second, I felt that old ache in my chest. The part of me that remembered the warmth of her hand in mine, the sound of her laugh when we used to dance in the kitchen, barefoot with Jamie squealing between us. But then another memory surfaced, her words, cold and sharp. You can have him, he likes you better anyway. And just like that, whatever was left of that ache began to harden. She said she wanted to come back, that she'd been too proud to reach out sooner, that she realized she took me and the life we had for granted. She missed the mornings, the dinners, even the way I'd text her to check in if she was running late. Said no one had ever loved her so gently, and maybe that's what hurt the most. I had loved her gently. I had loved her in every quiet, consistent, selfless way I knew how. But when it mattered, when things got hard, she didn't choose me. Why should I believe she'd choose me now? How do you trust someone who only remembers your worth after someone else forgets theirs? I took a breath and told her the truth, that I missed her once, that Jamie still asked about her sometimes, in those quiet, half-asleep moments when his guard was down, that I'd imagined this call 1,000 times in my head, and every time I imagined saying yes. But I didn't say yes, I told her no. I told her she made her choice, and just because it didn't work out the way she hoped doesn't mean I'm here, waiting like a backup plan. I told her I wasn't a consolation prize to be picked up when things got inconvenient, that Jamie and I had fought like hell to find some sense of peace after she left, and I wasn't about to rip open that wound for the sake of nostalgia. She cried harder, begged, said I was being cold, that she was lost and needed me. That maybe this time we could try therapy together, but I couldn't ignore what I already knew. If Mitchell hadn't left her, if everything had gone to plan, would she have called me at all? Or would she still be sipping champagne in some high-rise apartment while I packed Jamie's lunch alone? I told her goodbye. Since then, my phone hasn't stopped buzzing. Messages from her friends, from mine, even from her family. People who never reached out when I was drowning now suddenly had opinions. They said I was heartless, bitter, immature, that she was vulnerable and manipulated, that she needed grace and I was being cruel. And the one that cut the deepest? Her dad, a man I respected who once hugged me like his own son, asking me to come over this weekend. Not to fight, just to talk. He wants me to bring Jamie and sit down, have an intervention, as he put it, to lay it all out and see if this is really beyond repair. I agreed to go. Not because I wanted to get back together, but because I owe it to myself to be heard, and maybe for the first time to be seen. But as the weekend approaches, I'll admit I'm nervous, not about facing Natalie, but about what I might feel when I do. What if the love isn't entirely gone? What if I hear her say the right thing in the right tone and it shakes me? Or worse, what if nothing shakes me at all? Saturday came quicker than I expected. I dressed Jamie in his favorite blue hoodie, the one with the dinosaur pockets, and packed a bag with snacks and his tablet just in case the conversation dragged on. The drive to Natalie's parents' house felt heavier than it should have. Every streetlight looked familiar. Every turn a quiet reminder of the life I used to have. When we pulled into the driveway, her father was already outside waiting. He gave me a half smile, one of those expressions that carries too much history to really mean anything simple. Jamie ran up and hugged him. Watching that, I felt something twist in my chest. We stepped inside. The house hadn't changed. Same pictures on the walls, same faint smell of cinnamon and coffee. Natalie was there, sitting stiffly on the couch, eyes red and puffy like she hadn't slept in days. Courtney, thankfully, was nowhere in sight. Her mom hugged me tightly. Her dad gestured for us to sit. There were no lawyers this time, no formalities, just raw silence between people who used to be family. Natalie spoke first. She apologized again, this time more measured, less frantic. She talked about pressure, about being lost, about feeling like her life was spinning and grabbing onto the first hand that reached for her. She said leaving me wasn't just about wanting more. It was about thinking I wasn't enough because she didn't feel like she was enough. She told her parents things she had never admitted to me before, about the fear of being a failure, about how Courtney made her feel empowered, even when that meant tearing me down in the process, about how validation from someone like Mitchell made her feel seen but never safe. I listened quietly, let her say everything. And when she finished, all eyes turned to me. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't get emotional. I just told the truth. I said that I loved her, that I probably always would in some way, because you can't just erase 7 years and a child together. But I also told her that trust isn't something you rebuild just because you regret what happened. It takes time, it takes work, and most importantly, it takes consistency. And for the first time in a long time, I asked myself a question out loud. What do I need to feel whole again? Who am I when I'm not trying to fix someone else's mess? Because the truth is, this year taught me something. I'm not just someone's husband or someone's dad. I'm a man who survived heartbreak with his dignity intact. I'm a father who put his child first when everything else was crumbling. And I'm a person who deserves love that doesn't have to be earned through sacrifice. So I told her, no, not out of anger, not to hurt her, but because I finally understood my worth. And I knew going back would only be because she was scared, not because she was sure. Jamie sat next to me the whole time, drawing spaceships on his tablet. And when we left, he grabbed my hand and smiled. You okay, Dad? He asked. I nodded. Yeah, buddy, I really am. As we drove home, the sun started setting behind the trees. That soft golden light filled the car. And for the first time in what felt like forever, I felt light too. Not because I'd won, but because I didn't let pain change who I was. Sometimes closure doesn't come with a happy ending. Sometimes it's just peace, and that's more than enough. What would you have done in his shoes? After giving everything, his time, his love, his dreams, only to be left behind, would you take her back or walk away with your dignity and healing heart? He didn't ask for applause, just understanding. If his story touched you, let him know he's not alone. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment below. Your support means the world, not just to him, but to anyone who's ever had to choose between the past and their peace. Sometimes the hardest decision is the one that sets you free.